How's it going, Andrew?
Hey, good morning, man. How are you?
Hey, wait a minute. That's not Andrew. What are you doing in his chair?
Hey, get out of here. Get out of here.
Hey,
We got
it's time for our refreshment.
we got Brock
Time for
stealing our mic.
refreshment. I love it.
Hot mic.
Yeah, we're back at COGMNA. Having another great day, day 3. We're going to be having a great time. We've been hanging out with Brock all weekend from At Refreshment Podcast. We're going to have him on in a little bit, too. And you guys check those guys out at Refreshment. You can find them all over social media and check out their memes, the memes for days. And they're all the great episodes. But yeah, we're here again.
Hey,
Awesome.
thank you, guys.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
Hello, this is Mark Tabert. I am the presiding master of Des Moines Lodge No. 1 in Burlington, Iowa, which is the oldest lodge in Iowa. I've been a Freemason since 1998, and the way my path towards Freemasonry was that I'm a historian first. I worked in museums, and as I was pursuing my master's degree while working at the Historic Society of Western Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh, I discovered the history of fraternalism through research of a particular organization in Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh Washington Infantry. And I discovered this spectacular book called the Cyclopedia of Fraternalism by Stevens, which is a profoundly important book because he documented over 100 different fraternal organizations in the 1890s. And from that book, which is the center and cornerstone of all studies of fraternalism in America, I got interested in Freemasonry because it's the mother of all these fraternal organizations. What I mean by fraternalism, I mean the Oddfellows, the Grange, the Knights of Pythias, the Woodsmen of the World, the Elks, the Moose, all those organizations, including the Grand Army of the Republic that had a 3-degree ritual at one point. And from that, I researched and worked through my master's degree on fraternalism. I did an internship at the Museum of Our National Heritage in Lexington, Massachusetts, which is now the Sky Schweik Museum and Library. And then when I got a better job at the Missouri Historic Society in St. Louis, I was unable to get dispensation and join a Freemasonry in my hometown in Iowa. So I lived in St. Louis, and I would drive up to Burlington, up the Mississippi River, and get my entered apprentice degree, come back a month later, that sort of stuff. So then about 2 years later, then I got hired full-time as a curator at the Sky Schweik Museum and Library. And from that point, to the next 25 years, I was active in Freemasonry, a past master of Mystic Valley Lodge in Arlington, Massachusetts, and 33rd degree in the Valley of Boston. And then in 2006, I came down to the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia, where I was a curator for 18 years, and I was a past master of 1776, which maybe some of your listeners have heard of. Kirk McNulty has written several books called. So Kirk was a good friend of mine, and he was I think he's charter master of that lodge, so I knew Kirk quite well.
What's that famous book that he did? The Contemplating...
He did The Way of the Craftsman,
and
then he did Journey Through Ritual and Symbol.
That's right. Yep.
Yep. And then for the last 3 years, I semi-retired and moved back to Iowa, my hometown, simply because I could not stand living in the East Coast anymore. Too much traffic, too much contention, and too much pretension. So that was much. And then recently I was just hired by the Masonic Service Association of North America to be their administrator to help revitalize that organization and start producing more educational material.
Wow. You have done a lot of things.
Yeah.
You've curated everywhere.
plus 6 books, of course.
Yep.
I've written 6 books. Yeah.
I know. I was showing Matt when I talked to you. He's like, he wrote what book? And I show him the cover picture. He's like, oh, I know. Yep. And I was like, yep.
American Freemasons, and then a book on George Washington and Freemasonry, published by the University Press. Plus, I've done, I was president of the Masonic Library Museum Association, and then for many years I was secretary of the Masonic Restoration Foundation and was sort of at the founding of that organization in the early days. So if you know of the MRF. So.
Yep. So when you were researching fraternalism before you became a Mason, did you ever expect that in years later you'd be at these massive, prestigious archives and centers of learning in Masonry, around, especially the George Washington National Memorial and stuff like that?
Well, I think the way I looked at that, which was, I still consider myself a historian first, and my responsibility is to act like a historian and a curator when it comes to Masonic history. But I take my obligations as a Freemasonry seriously, but they are secondary to my faith as a Christian. because Freemasonry is not a religion, nor is it a substitute for one. No, so part of this was a calculation on my part, which is when you're in museums and you're looking for a better job, you have to specialize in something. And some people become art historians, or they become on living history farms, or they do military history or whatever. And when I was trying to get a job start a career in museums, there's still a lot of baby boomers out there running everything in museums, and some of them are still around those. And they, so for example, if I liked Civil War history, but there are plenty of people who love Civil War history. So there are limited jobs, and so I realized, and then nobody did fraternalism at all. And when I did papers at Duquesne University, was when I graduate work, the professors of these classes, and particularly a man named Mike Weber, who was the dean. No, he was the provost of the university. He actually called me into his office and said, "You need to do this. Fraternalism needs to be studied, and I'm glad you're doing it." So fraternalism was something I really loved because I loved the ritual and the regalia and just the sentimentality and everything. But it was also a professional calculation because nobody was doing it. So I literally only had to read 10 books, and I was an expert. Try to be an expert on the American Civil War by reading 10 books.
Right.
It's like saying you watched Star Wars 3 times and you know all about it. Try that at convention. Right? It's the same sort of realization. The nerds will rip you to shreds like piranha.
Well, and the crazy thing is, this is one of the few historical studies that, like, you can study the Civil War, but you can't be in the Civil War. You know what I mean? But in fraternalism, you can not only study the history, but you can actually understand it from being a member at the same time to get perspective on both ends.
And that's a very good point, and it switches it around because there are academic historians who do study Freemasonry, but they never would join. And Steve Bullock is an example. Will Moore is another. And I've had discussions with these guys where they believe that they can understand Freemasonry without being a member. And then the other side of it is they believe that I'm compromised, because I joined, because I'm biased. And my answer has always been on that is, well, if you were the curator of the Professional Golfers Association, you better play golf, right? Mm-hmm. It's not enough that you're doing exhibitions and talking about woods and irons and whatever. You got to be able to understand that. And then the other side of it, more especially, was, I would say to academics, and you're not biased, because everybody's biased. You all have a point of view, and you try to free yourself and try to be unbiased as much as you possible, but you always have a point of view. And in the academic world in the last 30 or 40 years, there's a whole agenda being driven about who's writing what and what papers are going to be published and what books are being selected. So, and how you're going to get tenure is based on all sorts of other criteria besides being biased. Right.
Well, it's like being a guy who writes a book about the taste of chocolate, and he does lots of studies on the chemical compounds and all that stuff, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll never eat a piece of chocolate." And you're like, "What do you know about it then, really?" And
that's exactly right. That's right. And so the other side of that too, which is a surprise to me, is when I started working at the museum in Lexington in 1999, and I was an Iowa Mason, and then I affiliated with the Massachusetts Lodge, and when they asked me to do ritual, I discovered that I was pretty good at it, and that there were a lot of really excellent ritualists in my lodge, and they were like, "You need to do this because you are good at it." And then I found out I enjoyed it. So it's like, I got a job at a golf museum, and I discovered that I really loved golf, and I found out I was pretty good at it. So I enjoy not only studying it, but I appreciate the ritual of it, right? And that's what's endearing about it. And that also, I think, inspires the work that I want to do, because I don't have that separation. But I also greatly value, and I think this is what the problem in Freemasonry is often, is that Freemasons are the other extreme. They think they know everything because they are past master or past grandmaster or whatever, or that they've read all the books that were written by Freemasons for Freemasons, and that's so self-absorbing that there's no context, Mm-hmm. And often my issue is, the example I use is you could, I'm not saying this book exists, but you could read a book about how lodges grew in California in the 1840s, and these Freemasons would even mention the gold rush as the reason why. They don't even have a concept of why, there's no context to it. There's no context to it.
Right.
And then Freemasons have this delusion that everything runs smooth and silk, and that the grand constitutions and grand secretaries and grand lodges came into being fully functioning without understanding there's an evolution process, and that Freemasonry in my opinion, before 1844 before the 1840s was just Wild Wild West. Right. People did whatever they want with Freemasonry, and only a period of time did the Grand Lodges become more structured, the ritual become more codified, the more
Right.
Yeah, when you
Growing
look at
pains.
it, before the Baltimore Convention, it was truly like they had to go, guys, we're doing too much stuff. And it's getting completely chaotic.
That's right.
One, if you look at even the history, like right around the foundation of the Grand Lodge of England, there's like so many grand bodies just rolling around trying to fight for which one's going to be the most legitimate and get the most buy-in and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There are, so there are examples even up into there are lodges that are chartered out of England and Ireland in the 1760s, 1770s who continue to hold on to their charter until the early 1800s, despite that there's a Grand Lodge in New York or Virginia, whatever. And those brothers in those lodges, we have a charter from England. We don't need you. We're just going to... How dare you suggest we have to turn on our charter?
Right.
Now, and the same with the Lodge St. Andrew in Boston. They were eventually coaxed into joining the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, and that's part of the reason why Massachusetts doesn't have numbers on their lodges. So there's this idea, there's a preconception amongst Freemasons that things made sense in the old days, when in fact nobody expected them to make sense, because you were doing whatever the hell you wanted to do in many ways. And because of the anti-Masonic period and because of competition from the Oddfellows and other organizations, they had to get their act together. Just like if you have a monopoly and you're the only guy who's the taxi driver in town, you can drive as slow as fast as you want. But once Uber shows up, you're competing against Uber. It's the same thing that happened with Freemasonry, and all sorts of other organizations, corporations, industries, whatever.
Yeah.
In 1910 there was like 200 manufacturers of automobiles, and by 1930 there's only like 10. Right, and that's just free market.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. And on top of your historical work, you're writing books, you also have a podcast as well.
Yep.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. This is just something that my friend and I, Bob Cooper, who retired. Bob Cooper was the curator at the Grand Lodge of Scotland for nearly 30 years. He and I have been very close friends for over 20 years, and he's come to America. We've traveled together. And since Bob's retiring and I was semi-retired, we wanted to keep our hand in and maintain our friendship. Since he lives in Scotland, I live in Ireland. He's getting older, and so am I. And so what we had talked about this idea for many years, and we call our organization the Masonic Authors Guild International, or MAGI, which is kind of a joke, but it's also a very serious idea. So there's two things going on with MAGI. We want to work with academic historians and indeed actually create a guild of qualified academic historians about what is legitimate Masonic Freemasonry and what's not. Because especially Bob Cooper, who spent most of his career trying to fight off this Knights Templar mythology crap in Scotland, to understand what Rosslyn Chapel is as a Christian church dedicated to St. Matthew than just some sort of hodgepodge of mystical symbols. So and then of course a lot of that Knights Templar stuff is predicated on French knights coming into Scotland.
Right.
So it's right on his home court.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story about that later. And I get tired of all just the stupid stuff that is published about George Washington or whatever. So we want to create a guild that we would actually then certify what books are legitimately good and what are bad. Because if you go to a bookstore, and even Grand Lodges recommend the worst kind of book. So it's okay if you want to read Blood and Blood, but that's not history. That's a guy telling a story. Right, and
Masonic mythology.
and people get wrapped up into that. So we wanted to have a guild where we would put our seal of approval on books and have a sense of that. But we want to do podcasts that not only do book reviews and things like that, but that we want to interview academic historians who publish papers that Freemasons never read because those papers appear in academic journals. So just this week we interviewed a woman professor at Drake University in Des Moines. She's Russian, and she wrote a paper about Russian Freemasonry in the time of Catherine the Great in the 1700s, and how Russians were trying to deal with Freemasonry as it related to the Orthodox faith, because Russia culture is based on intertwined with the Orthodox
one of the
faith.
pillars.
Yeah, and the Tsar is an autocrat. He's the head of the church, and he is...
What do they say? Autocracy, orthodoxy, and oligarchy? I forget the three pillars that they put on their thing,
So no Freemasons may be aware of the history of Freemasonry in Russia, but here is a woman who is Russian, who was talking about how these Freemasonry is coming into Russia and how these Russian intellectuals are trying to deal with it, right? So that's the kind of stuff we want to bring forth to counteract or to provide an alternative view than the amateurish, mystical mumbo-jumbo or fantasy stories about.
Whoever can get a keyboard can just write a book. And
that's right.
The amount of sources they pull from when writing it can be suspect at times.
But our long-range goal on that is to publish these sort of dissertations or papers and get them out, and then also to potentially be a true guild and then find ways to fund serious academic research into Freemasonry, right? Because there aren't. Individual academics will study Freemasonry according to whatever their discipline. She's a Russian historian, but she's doing other things with, if you're a historian of the American Civil War, you may discover about regimental lodges within, But how do we actually then create, because Freemasons is a global phenomenon. It exists everywhere. So how do you explain that? Right. And so we want to be cross-discipline about that. So we have, the podcast is a way also that more people will listen to a paper that's read than have to dig out the journal and get a hard copy. So we have the papers read often by the scholar, and then we interview them. That's basically. So 1 week you can listen to the paper, the next week and you can hear the interview.
That's a good format. I like that idea.
And where can they find your podcast?
It's on Patreon. We're primarily Patreon, so you have to subscribe. But there are short clips and annotated stuff that's on Spotify, Apple, elsewhere.
What was the name of the podcast?
Masonic Authors Guild International.
Okay. Yeah. So that is, all right, perfect, yeah.
Magi sounds to me like, I just keep thinking in my head.
It's fun. I like it.
Well, the name's great, too. I keep thinking of, Tolkien's Fellowship, where it's all these authors sitting there being like, oh, we're going to form a fellowship, and we're going to talk about books.
That's exactly right. And again, it should grow into just like there's the Academic Association for the Study of the Renaissance, or there's the Association of Scholars to Study the Industrial Revolution, or whatever, right? So it should be an academic association that if you're a Freemason and you have the academic credentials, you could be a member too, but you have to reach our standard, right?
Yep.
As opposed to papers being published in lodges of research or other things, which we highly encourage, and as the administrator for the MSA, I want as many short talks as possible. But the goal is to encourage a young Freemason to take a short talk and develop it into a longer paper, and even that could be published in Herodom or Philalethes, and then ultimately publish it in an academic journal. That's where the research should go. Right. Mm-hmm. That's where if you're going to play T-ball when you're 8 years old in Little League and high school varsity, you should be headed towards the major leagues. Why wouldn't you? Right. And if you're studying material and you're an intellectual type when you're 10 years old, you should want to go and get a PhD in whatever that is. If you're fascinated with rocks when you're 12, maybe you want to have a PhD in geology when you're 25. So we want to encourage that progress. And Freemasonry doesn't offer that. Freemasonry has good quality papers in Herodom and AQC, but they're not necessarily bridging into the academic world.
They're not taking that last step to that level.
Yeah, and academics are rarely interested in having their papers published in a Masonic org.
Yeah,
because they want it in a journal so their peers will actually. So
Right.
So before I forget, let me tell you the story about Bob Cooper. So Bob is, of course, a fierce, proud Scotsman, and he really resents this idea that the Knights Templars showed up at the Battle of Bannockburn at the last minute to save Robert the Bruce. And his line that he gave many years ago was, to suggest this is to suggest that at the very, very crest of the Battle of Gettysburg, when Pickett's charge almost broke the line, a flying column of Canadians came in and saved the day. Like, how dare you suggest it, and you guys are from Wisconsin, you're part of the Iron Brigade. You got old Abe the Eagle that used to carry into battle, and the great Arthur MacArthur, who led on Wisconsin up Lookout Mountain. You don't want to have Canadians saving your bacon, or your cheese, right? It is a great insult to them, and it's a great insult in many ways when Freemasons suggest that they are behind anything. When it's individual Freemasons who might do that. But Freemasonry did not create the American Revolution. Freemasonry did not free us from British rule. Freemasonry.
A couple of Freemasons were a part of it, but that's about
very
it.
Important.
Right.
But
it's not the organization acting.
Right.
Yep.
And it's perfectly reasonable to say that individual Freemasons did spectacular things. Yes. But Freemasonry is an institution does not do that. Our purpose is to improve the individual who then leaves the lodge and improves society.
Yep.
Right.
It's so interesting, too, that I feel like Scotland and Freemasonry keeps getting the shaft. Because
do.
first, UGLE's like, we actually did this first, and Scotland's like, hold on. And then, they ignore the Shaw Lodges and, all this history of where they were putzing around up there. And then, of course, the English are always like, you made this?
Well,
We made it.
No. Well, that's the English. The English are notorious for doing that all over the world throughout their empire. The English reputation is they push the Scotsmen into the battle front, and then when the battle's won, then the English take the plunder.
Yeah.
And it's very clear because Desogoulet, it's very well documented. Desogoulet went up to Scotland, worked his way into a lodge, saw the rituals, and pirated them and brought him back to England.
Yep.
And so if you really want to hear that story, just hit the recorder for 6-hour tape, and Bob Cooper will just start talking.
That's awesome.
Because he's seen it all. And in particular, there's an academic historian, David Stevenson, who is still alive, but he's quite elderly, and he wrote these spectacular books, The First Freemasons, and he studied all the lodge records. And he presented this material to QC Lodge 25, 30 years ago, and the English Freemasons just did not want to hear, at that time, did not want to hear anything that suggests that Freemasonry actually developed in Scotland.
Yeah. The academic consensus that's starting to come forward more and more and more is the Scots like, I keep telling you guys, why aren't you listening to me?
But the difference is, and this is to the credit, and I'm very much an Anglophile in many ways, is the English took this system and organized it and put it into a Grand Lodge system that allowed it to spread throughout their empire.
Centralize it.
Where the Scotsmen were, it was very much a local thing, right? And they didn't see it more than a local lodge, right?
Yep.
And in a community where the English, being enterprising and being imperialistic by their nature, because they unified, they conquered Wales, they conquered Scotland, they conquered Ireland. They're going to take something bigger and spread it, and that's the English genius, right?
Yep.
So you have to have both, right? It's not enough that you're an inventor. You got to have the businessman who can bring that product to market, right?
Sure.
Right, and the English are very good at that. So, but the Scots are overlooked, and that's also the British are better, or the English are just better at producing the propaganda and overwhelming
building
the
the narrative.
Yeah, and they have a king. They have London, they have the court, and so, it's one of those things which I would say is one of the reasons why George Washington joined Freemasonry, because he aspired to a king's commission. He viewed himself as an Englishman, and he wanted to gain acceptance. He assumed that he would be going to London at some point in his life, and he viewed Freemasonry as one more thing that would allow him to gain entry into London society and be accepted as a gentleman, and potentially even, be able to allow to meet the king and be received at the court, right? So, and that's always been part of Freemasonry. Freemasonry has always been a means for men to rise in society, right?
Sure.
By becoming gentlemen, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we wrap this up, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Masonic Service Association?
Sure. So the MSA has been around since really 1919. They were really organized originally to try and bring support to Freemasons serving in the United States Army during World War I. But that didn't really come to fruition. So after the war, they turned to hospital visitation for Masons, veterans, and then providing information to local lodges and short talk bulletins. And one of their early famous executive directors is Carl Cloudy, who's a prolific writer, wrote really Introduction to Freemasonry. Those 3 books are spectacular and were used and recommended by many Grand Lodges. And he was a playwright and all sorts of stuff. He was a close friend with Harry Truman. So the MSA, since the 1920s and 30s, have always produced a lot of educational material. They've done hospital visitations, and they created sort of USO canteen places during World War II for Masons. And then they do disaster. They've always done disaster relief coordination. So if there's a hurricane or there's an earthquake, then Freemasons will send their money to the MSA, and the MSA will coordinate it down to the Grand Lodge or local lodge level for relief to Freemasons. The charity is more broad, and the hospital visitation is now to all veterans rather than Freemasons who are veterans in hospitals. And then we do short talk bulletins that go to local lodges. And then Another part was the MIC, the Masonic Information Center, which was started in the late 80s, early 90s, which was a means to set up a means for the Freemasons to sort of interact with non-Masonic, with journalists and the news media to help correct misconceptions about Freemasonry, and also defend the fraternity, because at that time the Southern Baptist Convention was attacking the Freemasonry, and particularly past Grand Master George Aguirre Leisure, who worked for the Southern Baptist Convention, then was tasked to discredit Freemasonry. He came to the determination that Freemasonry was not incompatible with Christianity, and he left the Southern Baptist. Yep. So that's another thing that has. Some of that stuff has been discombobulated because there's been a little bit of change in leadership, and the MSA was originally in Maryland. It's been moved to Iowa, the Grand Lodge of Iowa. So now that they're in the process of getting things reorganized, and COVID, all that other stuff. So because I'm living in Iowa and semi-retired, it was a natural, sort of easy thing to ask me to participate and hire me. And I'm only working part-time right now, but the idea is to get things reorganized and then provide greater services, especially in partnership with the Masonic Renewal Committee and the other appendant affiliate bodies, and working with social media and working with AI and working with whatever else is out there. And that's part of what the MSA needs to do, is to figure out how to work through podcasts and what you guys are doing to reach a different generation that is less about hard copy paper and more about different means of education.
Creating content in the way people want to consume it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And podcast is probably the fastest growing form of media right now. So.
But it also, the other issue there is that Freemasonry is a serious business in which we undertake, and there's ways to pick up quick knowledge. There's a difference between information and knowledge.
Yep.
Yeah.
A profound difference. And so it's one thing to provide quick information on a cell phone app, but there's got a way to make sure that there's the path for those who have the interest to follow towards knowledge.
Yep.
And that knowledge has to be credible, accredited, professional knowledge. Right?
Yeah.
So it can't be, well, I know about the Knights Templar Freemasons, and I know about the medieval Knights Templar, and I heard that they're connected. That's not good enough. There's got to be, because it's sort of like, I know there's an organization called the Ancient Order of Foresters that are based on Robin Hood, and I know there was Robin Hood who lived in the time of King John. They must be connected, and that's not true either, you know.
Or like the Manly P. Hall stuff. You're like, oh boy. And you're like, the Atlanteans came in, and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah. So that's why you have to have academic historians. That's why you have to have professionals.
Yep.
You know, you have to have people who study. You know, and again, you can't have people who said, well, I've been to Scotland and I know about Scottish Freemasonry. You have to have Scottish Freemasons and people like Bob Cooper who've actually seen all the documents and read everything. He did, you know. So that's part of what the MSA is helping to facilitate. That's our job. So our job is to provide knowledge and information both to the profane but to Freemasons, so that Freemasonry can use it to educate his brothers and to encourage other men to join.
Excellent. Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Mark. This
Thank
was
you, Mark.
My pleasure.
Very enjoyable conversation.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Victoria. Right now, I represent the Grottos North America. I am the Grand Captain of the Guard for the Masonic term 25-26. So, and the question for what got me into Freemasonry. Also, if you guys don't know my voice, I'm also part of the Refreshment Masonic video podcast. So that's what it is too. And I also introduced myself as an Illinois Freemason because I'm a member of everything-ish. Anyways, so what got me into Freemasonry is actually family. My grandfather, who I never met, it's my dad's dad, was a Mason in the Philippines, and then he influenced my uncle, his son, and my grandfather actually had 6 boys. Only one, my uncle, decided to become a Mason. My dad did for some reason, and all my other uncles did it for some reason. But I remember growing up in the suburbs, going to his house, and just seeing all like the square and compasses, him getting installed with his hat, getting his gavel, seeing all that. So I thought, hey, that was pretty cool. And after college, I just got bored. I had nothing to do, so I petitioned the local lodge, and that was 2007. I got raised in 2008, so I think I'm whatever my math is, I think I'm 18 years.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
about right.
Ish. so yeah, now I'm here.
Right on.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? In the Philippines, don't they have our symbols on their money?
Oh yeah.
It's like they're big up on Freemasonry.
Yeah, it's like the 10 peso banknote. You can find it on there. It's actually on there. I want to say it's part of like one of their things to really just local to showcase everything Filipino.
Yeah, we'll
And-
rotate through symbols that are like animals one year, then so this year it's gonna be like architecture.
Yeah, but I mean, masonry is big and important enough that they put it on their money.
I think the Philippines is the one jurisdiction in the world that is the growingest.
Right.
One where they're
Yeah.
like, it's going crazy. So much so that the Pope has to say something. You're like, guys, you're all Catholic and you're all Masons. They're like, we love it.
Yeah,
And you're like,
yeah.
oh, okay, great.
Oh no, I forgot who I was talking to. I don't know if it's you or somebody else, but masonry is big in the Philippines, and so I had a brother who was a Mason, went to the Philippines. He was also a widow's son as well too. So that's as big as masonry out there. And what it is, he went there, got to the airport. Airport security goes, "Oh yeah, you're Marlon. All right, come with me." And his wife's like, "What did you do?"
Yeah.
Like, we're not even 5 minutes into the country, you're already getting pulled aside. And no, it was basically he got the VIP entrance. He didn't have to go through customs or anything like that. It was like pretty much reserved for like all the dignitaries, and that's what they put him through. So
That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
So I know you're obviously heavily involved in Grotto.
Yeah.
And I know it's been like a long journey for you with a lot of work to get to Grand Captain of the Guard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not just for Illinois, right?
Correct.
It is just for Illinois?
No.
International.
It's international.
It is international.
It is
Okay, that's what I
international.
thought.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about like what that adventure with Grotto has been like and why Grotto has become the passion? Like, what do you love about Grotto?
So when I got raised in 2008, this was about May 2008. I was like, okay, obviously you start kind of looking out to like the pendant bodies. I always just thought those were really cool. And everybody in my lodge was a shrine or a Scottish rite, and I'm the person who just kind of wants to go against the flow. Like, oh, if everybody's picking popular subject A, give me unknown subject B because I want to be that different. So doing research, I just saw the Grotto. I'm like, okay, whatever. Let me see what this is all about. Went to a Grotto meeting and just enjoyed it. It was just something different. And so I was just like, all right, let's do this. And I joined, I think, in 2008. So it's been a long time.
Right.
But then just kind of going through the lines and all that, and then meeting my now wife, it was like one of those things. I'm just like, I want to do something more than just being a monarch. Monarch is basically like being the worshipful master at a lodge or potentate or whatever. It's just, being the East. So, after talking with my wife, we actually decided, okay, why don't we just go start running for the grand line. And that was, I forgot the timeline, but I want to say it's I want to say it's 2021 or 2020. I think I announced in 2021 I started running for it.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And I remember hearing on episodes of At Refreshment, just all the travel and everything involved in kind of campaigning for that. It just seemed like an intense amount of work.
It is. It's crazy, but it's worth it. Meeting brothers from obviously Wisconsin. So shout out to Artaban Grotto.
Yep.
Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Texas, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida. New York. Just meeting California. Meeting brothers all over the country, and it's crazy to think. That I got brothers I can call upon, and if I, accidentally land in Florida for some reason, I got brothers I could call upon.
Right.
So, yeah, the campaigning was expensive, tiresome at times, but honestly, it's worth it. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it in the world for anything for it. And I actually kind of got. I'll admit, I was a little bit jealous because I'm a York Rite. I'm part of York Rite for Grand Chapter. And one of my companions was running for the bottom line there. And I remember I got there the day before, and I go, he sees me, he's like, hey, you want to announce for me? I'm like, announce for what? Oh, that I'm running? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, when are you, is this for the next year? Oh, no, it's for tomorrow. I'm like, that's all you have to do is just announce like the day, like on the morning of. Like I've been campaigning for the past year. And so, I mean, granted, they probably just visit, and you can't really campaign in Grand Chapter, but totally different grotto.
Well, and the campaigning too it does a lot of legwork for your future positions too, because you get to meet all the people down the road. So if you shortcut that, it's just kind of like you're like a name on a place, and they're like, oh, and it's like it gives you like a little bit of a advantage just because you know the people and you've made relationships.
It is, and I was the one who didn't win my first time. I think I won on my fourth try, I want to say, or something like that. I mean, after my second try, after my third try, I was like, I'm done. I didn't want to do it, but my wife's like, no, we're doing this one more time. Yep. You got this close. There's no point for you to stop.
Right.
So yeah, but I mean, it's just meeting the brothers and going to Supreme every year and just, like embracing them and seeing them. I mean, just saying hi, and it's crazy just thinking, last time I saw them was like about a year ago, but nothing, it seems like no time has passed by.
Yeah, just a family reunion.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So with that kind of different structure, I have one more question regarding that.
Sure.
Once you get into that first position that you run, is it progressive from there? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're campaigning every year to move up to the next one, right?
No. I mean, it's basically, I wouldn't say it's automatic, because obviously things do happen or whatever.
Right.
But, 99.9% of the time, it's just basically you're just moving up.
Right.
Each one. So.
It's one of those if tradition holds type of deals.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on for a quick hitter. To our listeners, if you want to check them out and hear more, go to @refreshment. They got sick memes that even if you haven't checked them out, it's a handful of brothers having a great time.
Cool guy approved.
Yep, and doing all that good stuff. So please check them out at @refreshment. And thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm Derek Hockett, Grand Master of Masons in Kansas. For just a little while longer. Our term, Masonic term, ends in March, and so on March 21st, our Deputy Grand Master Dave Hendricks will take the helm, and I'm going to go back to Southwest Kansas, and I'm going to be serving incoming Grand Master Dave Hendricks as an area deputy, supporting the lodges out in Southwest Kansas and doing that kind of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, before we get into what got you into Freemasonry real quick, since you touched on the changeover happening in March, I find it interesting how many different timelines there are for different grand jurisdictions. Everybody is, some are fall, some are summer, some are in the March. It's just all over the place as to when the transition of power happens.
Yep, you're right.
The Masonic year is the real mystery in Freemasonry. When does it start? When does it? So we have to do this paperwork in our lodge that we send up to the Grand Lodge that shows, it's like you can get an award for showing your planning, and they recommend all these things you do. But we always, when I have to fill it out, my brain breaks because I'm like, when does this start and end? Like, well, technically it's from this June to there, but you're writing it from the master from last year. And you're like,
right. Our lodges switch officers in December or January typically, but our Grand Lodge switches over in June. So everything's off kilter by 6 months. So are we going by the Grand Lodge year or the calendar year?
That is a big difference. And even for us, and like you said, lodge transitions in December, and then we meet in March, and it's still kind of, when you give awards, like attendance and when do we schedule things, a calendar year versus a Masonic year. Yeah, it's goofy. It's goofy.
It breaks my brain.
Yeah, so that was a fun little rabbit hole to go down. But what got you into Freemason?
I moved back to Southwest Kansas in 2006. I got married, and my first lady, Tricia, bless her heart, she consented to move back to my home, and which, if you've never traveled Kansas, Western Kansas is an acquired taste for sure. So you gotta be born there to appreciate it. But I came upon Freemasonry through a coworker, and I was my wife and I got married a little bit later in life, and so a lot of friends that were our age, they already had small family, little kids, families, and I worked with older guys that had established families and grandkids. We were in kind of a limbo spot, and was just looking for a place to land, some people to get to know. I mean, it was my home, but I was working in a neighboring town that didn't know as many people, and my control room operator his name was Rusty Hines, and Rusty was a member of the lodge, and my wife and I were walking around the county fair one July, and I come upon Rusty. We wanted a funnel cake. And at the time, that was one of the fundraisers for our lodge. We had a concession
nice.
trailer. We made funnel cakes and breakfast burritos for the county fair. And I had some family history that was known at the time, and some that I did not know, which I later found after I joined and became a Mason. And my wife's family was heavily involved in Freemasonry. It was known, actually, my wife's uncle, past Grandmaster Ken Bruns, was a past Grandmaster of Rhode Island.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, it's just like a lot of things in Freemasonry, as we start to pull back the layers, you go down those rabbit holes and you learn, and it's a lot of fun. So, petitioned the lodge in 2007, and I was raised Master Mason on Valentine's Day in 2008.
You just had your anniversary 2 days ago. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it is interesting when you can find those Masonic connections. Like, I have no one on my side of the family that are Masons. Now, what was interesting is when I joined, my wife's great-grandfather was a Mason. And my wife's like, what is this thing? And her grandma, though, was like, oh, yes. And I was like, she's like, I love the Masons, all that stuff. And I was like, well, I made my grandma-in-law very happy. So she was stoked about it. And she's like, I have stuff hidden in my house somewhere that I can't find ever because my house is kind of messy sometimes. But there's Masonic stuff here somewhere that you're going to have. And I was like, I'm looking forward to having it eventually.
That's awesome. Awesome.
So what would you say? You're coming towards the end of your term as Grand Master in a month here.
Yeah.
What would you say was the thing you're the most proud of and your biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
I think the thing that I'm most proud of, we do area meetings. I asked our area deputies to coordinate the schedules so that we didn't have any overlap in area meetings. I wanted to, because I live out in western Kansas, I did have a reception out there, but I didn't expect everybody to come to me. Geographically, some challenges there. And so I made a point to go to the areas and keep my agenda loose and really let my area deputies kind of plant some starter questions to kind of get some momentum within discussion. It really was just about listening to the craft, and heard some really the things that I think I was most proud of was I heard a 50-year Mason say, I've been a Mason for 50 years, and this is the first time anybody from Grand Lodge ever asked me what I thought.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that that was just one example that was known to me, and that I think that just that empowerment and letting them know that we're here to listen. We're here from we're from Grand Lodge, and we're here to help. Not always that kind of mentality, but an opportunity to let them know that the opinion matters, and that give them some fire, give them some momentum, and let them carry that through. Challenge wise, for me personally, it's just managing the workload. Having a day job. I've got a family. My boys are a sophomore and junior in high school. I got to give them a shout out too. While I've been gone over this weekend, they were competing at State Scholars Bowl, and so now they are back-to-back state champions for Kansas Division 1A, Division 2. So small schools, but having to be away from family and making sure that my wife, she's got Eastern Star history. Actually, my mother-in-law, she is a deputy for OES down in Texas. My wife knows the game, and making sure my boys understand why it's important to me and what it means for them as well. Time management, using the 24-inch gauge, and managing the miles, just making sure I can be where I need to be to support the craft, living way out on the... it's essentially 6 hours for me from one end of the state to the other. So I got to go to Kansas City or southeast Kansas. Yeah.
I can imagine the 24-inch gauge as Grandmaster is intense, because I'm currently serving as Master of the Lodge for my lodge, and that's already intense enough for me.
Yeah.
Because it's like Matt goes, he's a past master, and he goes, just so you know, when you get in there, every day something's going to happen to you. And you're like, what? And so, even being here this week, I still am having to check my emails because, getting text messages from an officer like, yo, something's going on over here. And I'm like, oh, my God, can I take 24 hours? Like, nope, there's something going on.
Nope.
Master, something's going on over here. Make it run off, take a call, like, hey, I need you to go over to the building, go do this, do that, run around. Yeah. So I can always imagine that at the executive grand level, that's just even more intense.
Oh, yeah. And I hope, that's always a hindsight thing. when you look back and making sure that you delegated at the right time to the right people. And with the way our line works, our progressive line is you come in at Grand Senior Deacon, and so we stay with the same group of guys for that 5-6 year period,
right?
And it's really helped us maintain cohesion.
Yeah.
And even we definitely got our own personalities, and we don't see eye to eye everything on all the time.
Right.
But we've had a strategic plan in Kansas. We're on about year 15. That has also helped immensely too, where we're not stopping and starting every year. Yeah. We're able to
reinventing the wheel over and over.
We have maintained a ton of momentum, and momentum's important too, because it's not just magic, snap your fingers, I've got a strategic plan and all these things are going to fix themselves.
Right.
A lot of those core things, it has taken a lot of years for them to trickle down through the system, for the lodges to hear the same message over and over. This is what's important to us, and this is what's going to make Kansas Freemasonry better, and how do we help you use those things to maintain the momentum and keep being better.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, I know you got a meeting to run to, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
These podcasts that you guys do, I think it's vitally important. In the technological age, these types of formats are how we correctly apply Masonic morals and values to the technological world. That was one thing I really wanted to tell you guys today is thank you for being able, using this media to share Masonic light as broadly as we can. So thank you.
My biggest hope,
appreciate that,
and with our fellowship here, is that brothers who maybe haven't been to lodge in a while, listen, remember what it's like, and come home again.
Nice.
And so it's like the lodge away from lodge. You can just listen to brothers doing brother stuff, talking about brother things, and I hope it inspires brothers to say, hey, maybe I need to get back to work and go back to the lodge.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming on.
You bet.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
I'm Paul Hook. He said I must talk about how I got into Masonry. Contrary to what most people do, I had a friend who was a Mason that said, I think you should join. And he was right. That was more than 30 years ago. So now I've gone through. I've been judge advocate for the Grand Lodge of New York. I've been Grand High Priest for the Grand Chapter of New York, and now I'm president of the the board of directors of the Masonic Medical Research Institute, located in Utica, New York.
Absolutely awesome. So I saw when I was driving down here, your team had sent out an email talking about MMRI, and me and Matt both looked at each other and went, "That sounds really interesting.
Right.
I would like to know more." So we dragged you over here to tell us more and tell our listeners more about.
All right. A quick history. In 1947, Raymond C. Ellis founded the Masonic Medical Research Foundation with the Grand Lodge of the State of New York. 11 years later, when he became Grand Master, he changed it from a foundation that just gave money out to an institute, so that whatever we were doing and giving money to had all of the Masonic values in it also. Not just the scientific values, but the Masonic values. Historically, for the first 50 years or so, mostly was basic heart research, infant death syndrome. They did work on the pacemakers and defibrillators. In the last 8 years, we have expanded. We have a new executive director in that time, Dr. Maria Contarinas, who we got from Harvard. And she's been getting scientists from Harvard and Yale and Southern California coming to Central New York. So there's something going on in Central New York with MMRI. It's still a continuation of a lot of heart research, diabetes. We've added areas like PTSD, lupus, autism. There's a lot of different research, and we should have a couple real nice discoveries just coming out that we're just getting ready to head to patent that relates to diabetes and heart disease.
Awesome. So this institute, more or less, it's pretty cool that it went from just giving away money to actually doing legwork. I feel like that gives you so much more control over the mission and the direction and how to actually make a real impact.
I believe it does. And the thing is, for Masons, I think it's even more important if you give to it. Everything that comes out from the Masonic Medical Research Institute, you can say, I helped with that. And since it's coming from the Masonic Medical Research Institute, people actually might know what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
And go, well, maybe I want to be a part of it. So to me, it's a win-win. We get it done in the way that we believe that it should be done, and we get our name out there, and we try to help humanity. I tell people going, we're helping our neighbors, whether they're next door or half a world away.
Absolutely. So to help our listeners know how, if they're interested, A, how can they find more information? And B, can you tell us a little bit about your 357 campaign to how they can help out and how they can make an impact?
All right, first of all, the web address is mmri.edu. You go there, you can peruse it, take a look at. It's broken down by our scientists. You can take a look what each of the 6 of our principal investigators are doing and researching. You can go through all the things about donating. Obviously, that's part of why I'm here. And you can go through, we've got the list of all our publications. And what the 357 is our first ever nationwide Masonic campaign. It may sound familiar, 3 steps for hope, 5 steps for discovery, and 7 steps toward a cure. So it's the idea of, can every lodge, or at least every strong lodge, donate $357
Yeah.
or $5 a Mason, and it would help us not just survive but thrive. And the idea is anything that we raise from this campaign is over what is our budget to survive. So this is to help us thrive and start adding to our endowment for the future.
Absolutely. So you go to mmri.edu, you get more information, and for just $5 a day, or $5 a month.
Oh, you can come up with $5 a day,
Yeah.
or you can join our 1958 club.
Yeah.
It's like the Shriners, $19 and everything else. By the way, my monthly Shriners goes to their research part because I believe in research.
Yeah.
But 1958. It's again the year the Institute was founded, and just 1958, and we're very Masonic. We give out pins for it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
And then that's like, at this hotel, that's a cup of coffee. That you just, away you go, and you can just help, find cures for these ailments and all that good stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving us more information about this awesome institution.
My pleasure. I thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, hello out there. My name is Brad Kane. I am the Imperial Potentate of Shriners International. That includes being the chairman of the board of directors of both the fraternity and Shriners Hospitals for Children. I got into Masonry because I was a child of a Shriner and spent my time, Masonry and Shrine, and spent my time going to football games and circuses and parades and picnics, and just enjoyed it immensely, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I got my Master Mason through college when I was a senior in college, and then went on to Scottish Rite and Shrine. So I love it all, and you can do it all. I mean, you can't be involved with all of it
At the same
extensively
time.
at the same time. But you go through both, or all 3 or 4, and you find out what your niche is.
Right, for sure.
So, being the Imperial Potentate of Shriners International, that means you like the Shrine a lot.
Absolutely, I've been in it for 45 years.
Yep. Wow. So you got drawn to the Shrine, your dad's a Shriner, all that good stuff. What do you think your favorite thing is about the Shrine that really makes it special?
I would say the brotherhood. You take the Masonic values, you bring in the family, and you bring in the charity. Not that Masons don't have family and charity, but we take it to another level. And because it's, instead of your lodge being part of your state, Shriners International is worldwide. And our fraternity has its philanthropy, Shriners Hospitals for Children. And we went from 22 hospitals to now over 135 touch points across the world.
This is going to be a fun question. So you're, as Imperial Potentate, you've seen a lot of shrines. What's the most interesting units you've seen worldwide?
We've got cigar clubs, we've got whiskey clubs, we've got kitchen units, we've got guys who like to barbecue and smoke. I think some of the parade units are the most interesting. In the southeastern part of the country, they have pirates.
Yeah, we got one now too.
Okay. Got one too.
In the southern part of the country, they have hillbillies.
We have
we have one of those too somehow. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is when you go to a parade and you see guys riding what I will call a recliner but that's their parade unit.
Yeah.
And they just ride with recliners. I've seen coolers,
Bar stools.
Yeah. They can be dangerous, as we all know. But
the really long bike, the mega bike or whatever.
Long riders.
Yeah.
So, no one's better than the other. You just, as I said, you find your niche and enjoy.
That's one thing I've always thought is really cool at the shrine is, besides being a member of your main shrine unit, that there's all these little units and they can be creative and silly or fun or interesting, but it can be like any Shriner can be like, there's an idea for a unit.
Absolutely.
Let's get it off the ground. And so you can really tailor your experience if you're willing to put in the work and, make something interesting and fun. I mean, riding bar stools is the craziest thing.
It is. I know when I served as potentate of Arab Shrine in Topeka, Kansas in 2015, we started a unit that was the velocipedes. And I'm going, okay, what's that? It's the guys who love to do long-distance bike riding.
Yeah.
So like every Saturday morning, they go out and ride for 2 hours, and that's their camaraderie.
Right.
We also started our Swiners, which is our barbecue unit and club.
Swiners is a great name.
Not only do we enjoy eating barbecue, but we cook for the units and the clubs in the temple.
Yeah.
We also started a Brews Brothers for guys who love to make and drink beer.
Yeah.
There's always some unit or club you can find that hits your wheelhouse.
It's like, hey, you have a hobby you like? Wouldn't you have more fun if you were doing it with your brothers? And you're like, let's do it together at the shrine.
Absolutely. We always talk about when you go to the lodge, take a friend, because it's much more enjoyable and fun to go through that experience with somebody else.
Right.
Especially somebody that you know and like, and you can chat about what you went through, and then take it to either Scottish or York Rite, up to the shrine. And we've had units that started with, there's gaming units for the younger crowd.
Yeah.
They love that kind of stuff, Minecraft and all that stuff. There's technology units, and there's kite flying units, and it's just because it's not there now doesn't mean you can't get 3 or 4 guys who like to do that and start it. Nothing says a unit has to be 30 people.
You got to start somewhere, and who knows? Sky's the limit. There's definitely within our shrine, there's smaller units and larger units. Just depends on what it is.
And I encourage the younger guys, the 25 to 35 to 40-year-olds, to start units that pertain to your age level. Because we know we all need to attract the younger group.
Yep.
Age group. And that's a great way to do it.
And that's the only way things evolve, right? It's not like, I guarantee there's Shriner units from, years and years and years, decades ago, that you're like, that was a thing? It's like, I don't know, what's an old hobby? What's the single wheel unicycle? The unicycle, right?
Unicycle.
The big bikes or something.
Well, there's units out there that are ham operators.
Yep, there's a good example.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So there's units out there that sing. They're the chanters, or whatever you want to call them. And most 25-year-olds, unless they grew up in like a church choir, are going, you don't want to hear me sing.
Yeah.
So that one, I'll pass on that one.
What would you say, how long have you been an Imperial Potentate now?
Since June 30 of last year.
Okay. What would you say the most valuable lesson you've learned while being an Imperial Potentate is, or your most challenging experience that you've had?
Well, I wouldn't say lesson. I would say some of the characteristics that you need to keep top of mind would be patience, listening, kindness. It's okay to disagree with somebody, but you don't need to shout. If somebody comes up and has a problem, you listen to them, and you say, okay, what's yours? How should we take care of that? I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. You tell me first what you think you need to do. So it's being diplomatic. 999 to 1,000 have been great things that have happened. There's always a couple things that you go, I wish that wouldn't have happened. Why'd you do that? You cross that bridge every time one happens, and you deal with it.
Right.
And you learn from it.
Yeah, but I've been. My lady Cheryl and I are overwhelmed with the kindness and support that we've been shown through the Shrine Mason community, from California to New York and Florida and Montreal to down into Mexico. So we've probably visited 25 states this last 6 months, but some of them are, you go to an airport, then you go to your next one.
Yeah.
I was in Dallas yesterday getting ready to board a flight, and I had a Shrine logo on, and a flight attendant who was going to be on my flight said, "Are you a Shriner?" I said, yeah. And so we started chatting, and he said, well, I'm from Hawaii. I said, I know a guy out there, and happened to be the administrator of our hospital. And so he's based out of Chicago. We took a picture, we sent it to him, and it's like, that's brotherhood.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And now, because he has seen both of us, hopefully that will spur him on to become a Mason.
And that's just by wearing your stuff proudly, so people can.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what we talk about. You like the to be one, ask one atmosphere. It's like you can only ask if they know you are one. So you need to show off, especially if you're proud of it and it's something you take things, because people are interested. People know the Shriners. They see them. They've seen the cars.
Well, I would argue that the Shrine is the most public-facing body within Freemasonry.
Well, and that's for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, Masonry was started to be a close-knit group of guys that then transformed into national and then world, but it's still a close-knit group of guys wherever you are.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The Shrine does take that close-knit group to a different level by bringing in the families, and actually having the hospital system helps immensely too get get our name out. And when somebody thinks of Shrine, they better think of Masons too.
Yep.
Because we can't be one without the other. And we always refer to ourselves as Shrine Masons, not necessarily Shriners.
Mm-hmm.
Because our core value and our roots began at the altar.
Yep.
And we need to remember that always. And it frustrates me when guys get into arguments, and I just want to say, we all knelt at that same altar.
Right.
Same
Yeah, your
altar.
Masonic obligation didn't get left at the door when you came into the Shrine.
You meet on the level, part on the square, or vice versa, and it's like, we need to be respectful.
Mm-hmm. Civil.
There's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
We talk a lot on this podcast about civility. We're like, this is something that's getting lost these days. It's like, you can disagree nicely. Like, you don't have to take it personally.
Right.
All you have to do is turn on the TV and listen to politics. It's just sad. I mean, if more of those men were Masons, it may be a different light.
Agree.
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on and taking a couple minutes
My
to join
pleasure.
us and talk Shrine. It's awesome to meet you.
Thank you.
And, I hope you have a great
Wonderful
weekend.
to meet you.
Well,
Thank
if
you
you need
again
me
for
later
coming on.
today or tomorrow, let me know.
Will do.
We'll be here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
My name is Worshipful Brother Cameron Adamson. I am currently the Worshipful Master, Border Cities Lodge number 554. I'm past master of a couple other lodges, and I'm actually a member of 5 lodges altogether, so I'm a member of quite a few.
Sure.
But current Worshipful Master. What brought me into Freemasonry, the simplest answer is my father was a Freemason, or is a Freemason, as was both of my grandfathers. It's not as though when I say that, I think a lot of people get this implication that my dad was forced it upon me or was always talking about it or whatever it is, and that's not the case. It's just rather growing up with it, going to the Christmas parties and the events and seeing what it meant for the community and for my dad. I always kind of assumed I would join sooner or later. I didn't need the push from my father. I just saw what value it was. And then, that's what got me into it. And then what kept me showing up regularly is the fact that even though it can often be kind of a pain in the butt, it's also something I love. So
Sure. So you joined, you said, how many years have you been a Mason now?
I joined in 2007, so about 20 years.
20 years. So what kept you coming back? Like, you joined, what keeps you in lodge and keeps you, enjoying the craft?
It's like your favorite song. At a certain point, I don't know if I can even answer that question, because the example I've always used is my favorite song is Simple Man by Leonard Skinner. I love that song. I can be listening to that song in the radio, and the person next to me can hear the exact same song with the exact same lyrics, the exact same melody, and it doesn't hit for him the same way it hits for me, right? And at a certain point, it's like asking anybody, why do you love the thing you love? Why do you like the thing you like? I don't know if you have much of a choice. For whatever reason, there's always been something about Freemasonry from the moment that I first joined, be it the ritual, the fellowship, the tolerance for different religions and different politics and different backgrounds that it espouses so well. It just spoke to me in a way that really nothing else has. And so... And I do think that's a unique characteristic, not just to me, but to active Freemasons. There's just something about Freemasonry that we love. And again, I can say, when I think about Freemasonry, I think about tolerance, which is something that I think Freemasonry, more so than any other group or organization, demonstrates to the world, the value of tolerance, going all the way back to the Anderson Constitution, 1723. But there are many other groups and organizations that demonstrate tolerance as well. I think at its core, I just, for whatever reason, there's something about my personality and my personality, what was happening in my life when I joined, for whatever reason, I just really took to it and I fell in love with it.
It's interesting because, when you say, like, even back to Anderson's constitutions, like, in a world where Catholics and Protestants were killing each other and everyone was getting freaked out, Masonry was like, guys, we can all work together and we can still make the world a better place. You do not need to divide yourselves unnecessarily. And that at the time was radical. That was a radical idea for the time. And it's pretty sweet that it's, like, codified within our ethics, like, this is standard. This is a requirement of being a good man.
I've always felt that, since I read it, the most beautiful paragraph ever written about, I suppose you could say religious tolerance specifically, but I think you could probably just say tolerance in general, was concerning God and religion from the Anderson Constitutions. It's a paragraph, but it's beautiful. And the idea of, men who would be perpetual strangers being brought together. Yep. I think that's a really beautiful statement and a beautiful section. And it's such a beautiful thing about Freemasonry. And again, that's because even though, like I said, Freemasonry can always be a pain in the butt. Your couch is really comfortable. There's something good on the television. You have to get up. You have to go. You have to put on the suit and tie. It's still, what keeps me coming back to it at its core is the fact that I love it. And a big part of that love is its emphasis on tolerance and dignity, both, or, not simply religious, but religious, political,
socioeconomic,
ethnic, age. Yeah. 20-year-old, I'm sorry, I forget, 21 in Illinois?
We're from Wisconsin.
So in Ontario, it's 21. I know in other jurisdictions it's 18.
Yeah.
So you can have an 18-year-old and a 94-year-old hanging out together.
Yep. I know. We had a past master just pass away, and I was his Uber driver for many years to get to Lodge because his wife took his keys away for good reason. Every time I picked him up, he'd be so mad about it for months. He passed away recently, but you're sitting there, and that was a buddy of mine, and it's just like, where would that happen outside of here besides your own grandparents or something like that? Like, you're connected with men that cross all boundaries in such a unique way. And, it's not like they're like, oh, that's just my parent. You're like, oh, no, this is my friend. This is my friend. He's ancient. He talks too many old stories, but I like him anyways. And
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that has concerned me about society, not to get super philosophical, but I hope you don't mind if I give a quick plug for my podcast.
Please do.
Yep.
So I have a podcast called Strong Comes Promotions. I do live streams regularly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has really concerned me on my live stream, and I think this says something about where we're at societal-wise, is I get a lot of questions. How can you work with people of different faiths? Or how can you work with people of different politics? The idea that that's something that you have to ask the question for. Yeah. I think if anything, it demonstrates why Freemasonry is so important in 2026, that we've kind of, when I was growing up, I was born in 83, part of it came from my dad, and maybe it was because my dad was a Mason, who knows.
Would you go slide that chair a little closer just so people don't run into it?
It was, there was just understanding that if you can, it doesn't matter if the person next to you is a Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Hindu or Sikh, that you can work with them and get along with them, and that shouldn't define who they are. And it seems like, again, with the live stream, the questions I'm getting, the idea of working with people of different faiths has almost become an alien concept to people.
Well, and the crazy thing about it is, like, my job's to go out and convert everybody to whatever chosen faith I want to? It's like, you work with people of different faiths all the time. Why is it so strange that we break bread with people of different faiths? Like, it's really like, I like how Masonry lays it out as saying that your spirituality is your personal thing. That's something you have to work on, and we're not going to weigh in on it. Like, so you do your thing, but we think that there's a way to define what a good man is and what a good man should do for their community, so we should do that together. Am I right? And then you're like, yeah, it seems pretty obvious, but yeah, it's a weird time.
What Freemasonry does that can enhance that relationship with your faith is we boil it down to tenets that should be found in any faith, right? It's a common ground everybody can come come together on because we all believe in those core things, or we should at least, right?
Yep. Love your neighbor, take care of your community, take care of your family, and try to become a better man every day. I don't think any faith would be like, well, actually, you're like, that sounds lame. Let's do something else. Like, it doesn't happen, generally speaking.
No, I agree completely. And that is just one of the things I love about Freemasonry. And maybe it's the thing I love the most about it, as well as its emphasis on trying to help the community and those around you, right? And I always try to be, I don't ever want to be, I'm not sure what the term would be, like there are many groups and organizations that also encourage or demonstrate religious tolerance and tolerance for different socioeconomic statuses. It's just, and again, it's so hard to define what it is, but for whatever reason, Freemasonry is something I fell in love with. One of the exercises I try to do with people when they ask, like, why do you love Freemasonry? I'll ask them, why do you love your favorite song?
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, they realize, like, they'll say, I like the lyrics. They say, well, I've heard those lyrics. I don't like them. What am I missing about them? And at a certain point, they get to this point of they realize it's just the things you love choose you as much as you choose them.
That's a good quote. So for our listeners, where can they find your podcast if they want to hear more from you?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
Square and Compass Promotions. I'm a very foolish person, so when I was creating it, I didn't write it down square and then A-N-D. I did square and the ampersand symbol, which, looking back, I would have changed that, but it's too late now. Square and Compass Promotions. I do primarily actually live streaming now.
Okay.
But I still try to do regular interviews with different brethren and, do a lot of content as well. Like, for example, we got a tournament right now, since it's President's Day, favorite Masonic U.S. president, and then asking people to vote on which is their favorite, see who wins, and then I'll do probably a live stream or a podcast about the winning president.
There you go.
The winning
That's
Masonic
fun.
president. So far, my suspicion is it's going to be George Washington,
The low-hanging fruit.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. Well, I mean,
I do like Ted.
Let me see if I can. I'll give you guys the numbers so far. Let's see if I can find it. It worked out well because I was able to, and I know it's a debated point right now, but I was able to do 16 Masonic presidents because I included Joe Biden in there, which I know is disputed membership.
Right.
So I put in brackets next to him disputed membership, but I was like, you know what? At least that way I get, an even bracket of 4x4.
Yeah.
Okay, so
With an asterisk next to it. Yep.
So we've got, of the first 4 brackets, Harry Truman is in the lead in bracket number 4.
Wow.
Beating out Lyndon B. Johnson, who is my favorite, actually, Masonic president. I know he was an EA. That's another one people debate.
Yeah.
Because he never made it beyond Ed Apprentice, but I think that counts.
He's the brother, technically.
Of the third bracket, Franklin Roosevelt is at 67%, and then Theodore Roosevelt is at 33%.
Oh.
Taft and Harding got nothing so far.
Well, Taft was a meh. Harding. Wasn't Hoover one?
I don't believe he was.
No, who am I thinking of? Maybe it's Truman. I don't remember.
James Garfield is at 60%, and then of the first bracket, George Washington's at 100. So
James Garfield coming in strong. I don't know anything about James Garfield.
Right. Yeah, I don't know
it's got to
much
be the
about
name.
him.
It's got to be the name, just Garfield.
I'm gonna throw out one more question because you've sat in the East, it seems like a considerable number of times at this point. If you had a piece of advice for a newly elected or just installed worshipful master, what would it be?
Yeah.
He's like 6 weeks in.
Oh my gosh. If I had a piece of... Remember what it is you love about Freemasonry and the craft. Because, just as I mentioned, right, it's the pain in the butt of... Again, the couch is comfortable, there's something good on the television, you had a long day at work. When you're a worshipful master, right, those pains are amplified because now you also have to deal with all of the administrative work that goes into it. And if 2 brothers are having a conflict, you have to try to be the one to mediate it. And it could even be a conflict that was before your time, and it just has led into your thing.
I've inherited some.
And, in those moments, it's it's incredibly easy, again, to forget what, that this is supposed to be fun, this is supposed to be enjoyable, this is supposed to be something that you love. And remember, because you're the worship master, you have the responsibilities, but I guess remember what it is you love about the craft, and don't let those things get too far, and do what you think is best. I mean, you're never going to make everybody happy. You're at the best, you can make some of the people happy, but you have to do what you think is right and what you think is best. And at the end of the day, Freemasonry is democratic in nature, so you're in for the term, and then somebody else takes over, and then they get the chance to run with the ball. So, I think that's what I would say. Again, because there's many times within Freemasonry where I've had to sit back and think to myself, yes, I'm dealing with this, I'm putting out this fire, but where else do I get to experience the things I've experienced? Where else? What other organization is there that I can travel to the Philippines and go to the Masonic Lodge and be welcomed as a brother to men I've never met? Or Chicago, or Wisconsin, maybe one day, knock on wood. Or, it's something, there's something really beautiful about that, and that should hopefully carry you through the annoyances or the responsibilities of leadership.
Awesome.
I like it.
That's
That was
great
a great
advice.
answer.
Thank you so much for joining us for a quick hitter interview. And to our listeners, check out his podcast. You want to hear more and more wisdom like that? You know where to find him.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're back on, and we'll have a familiar voice that you probably heard the other day. We have Brother Harrison Singer coming on from Singer Media Group. He's going to come on. He wants to talk to us a little bit about some modernizations we can make in the way that we use technology to augment Masonry. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So, tell us a little bit more about what you've been working on and this idea that you're promoting here at COGMNA that is going to be something interesting and useful for lodges around the world.
Absolutely. And honored to be back on and be able to chat about this. I'll be speaking tomorrow at the Grand Session. My talk's titled, how to build a digital funnel to bring good men to the Western Gate. Because, we get a lot of men interested, but not all of them fit the criteria.
Right.
Some of them are looking for the Templar treasure and, think we're the Illuminati. And, honestly, after the first dinner, I'm very much convinced we're not the Illuminati. We're not running the world here. Like they delivered 2 salad courses back to back. I'm like, what is going on here?
Back-to-back salad.
Back-to-back,
Yeah.
Wait,
Get your
you
roughage.
mean we're not taking over the world one pancake breakfast at a time? Come on, man.
Wink, wink. Yeah, we've been working. We have about 7 Grand Lodges we've worked with, turning on social media, digital advertising, digital marketing, and we've learned a lot over the last 5 years. We've made some mistakes. We've a lot of learning curves, and we like to think of ourselves as more scientists, right? When it comes to digital, you always have a control group and you're A/B testing. Version A versus version B.
Yep.
This audience versus that audience. And the cool thing is we're getting a lot of response from men 25 to 44, which is what this is all about.
Right.
Trying to bring in the millennials, trying to bring in Gen Z, which we haven't quite cracked Gen Z yet.
Yep.
We got millennials down to a science because, the studies and the research that the Scottish Rite have done talk about the value, just alignment, right? And I got the great fortune of attending Linda Patch's speech this morning.
Okay.
And just hearing all the recent studies, and they kind of updated all the research that they did back in 2016. And they still find that men are drawn to Masonry. We don't need to change. We don't need to change the ritual. All we got to do is just show up.
Right.
And, my premise is that we don't have a marketing problem. We don't have a branding problem. We have a door problem. Everybody knows the square and compasses. They don't know what it's called, square and compass, but they've seen it, right? They've seen National Treasure. They've been on YouTube. They've heard the conspiracy theories, so they're drawn to it. It's like this mesmerizing curiosity, behind locked doors. So men are drawn to this, and they're submitting forms. They're following. They're subscribing. They're curious, and we just need to get out of the way. Some of the research she shared is 80% of inquiries that have come through the front door of Masonry, which, beafreemason.org that they put together, have not been replied to. So 80% of men that have submitted that form, and it's a long, hefty form, they're just sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere, which is honestly kind of sad.
That's very disappointing. That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, and, not to step over it, And I don't think I'm going to bring this up tomorrow, but I didn't expect there to be so much sadness here this weekend. And, I'm not trying to bring the mood down or anything, but you hear all these old men talking about their friends, lifelong, the generation is dying out and lodges are closing and they're selling these big, beautiful buildings. And it's just sad to hear that and then look at the data saying, well, we have all these men that are interested, that are interested in showing up and joining, and they're just sitting in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, where's the miss? It is clear.
Right.
You're staring at it, and you're like... Yeah, it's interesting because, in our jurisdiction, we implemented lodge membership reps and district membership reps. So when that funnel that you're talking about goes to the district, they send it down to the lodge that's logically there, and they have a spreadsheet tracking who's been reached out to, and it goes to our lodge membership rep. We house with our junior deacon. We didn't do a person. We make him learn it every time, and he has to call him. And he has to track on his spreadsheet, did he call him, did he text him, did he email him? And at that point, he lets the district membership rep know, I've done these steps. I'm dropping the lead. I'll let you know if he follows up or resurfaces. But yeah, this is a massive problem. We're everywhere. Yeah, every time on Reddit, how many times do you see someone go, how long do I wait for someone to respond? Right. And they're like, dude, email their Grand Lodge. He's like, you got to get somebody who's going to respond to you.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I submitted the form on Be a Freemason.
Yep.
It took 6 months for them to get back to me. And I got called and texted by kind of this weird guy that was just trying to take me out for coffee. And then at the coffee, he made it very clear I needed to help him with his business before he was going to put me into Masonry. And it was just what is this? Obviously I had a vested interest in joining, but a lot of men don't. We're not taking care of men, right? And like you're saying, if they join, via Freemasonry, they may or may not hear back at the state level. And they may or may not go down to the district level. And they may or may not go to the local lodge. And then that person may or may not follow up. And it just seems like it's a systemic issue. Right. And we're trying to bring accountability to that. And, no shame. It's just a system, right? And that's how I like to lead my company, too. If we don't have a system in place, that's my fault. That's a leadership miss. But the fact that men are just not hearing back, that's really the critical issue. And my background is, fine dining and hospitality, and I worked a lot with, franchise restaurant groups. And having served tables, the most important thing that I learned, the most important thing during a dinner service is the check back, right? It's not when you take the order, it's not when you drop the bill, it's checking back after the food was delivered to see, hey, is that the right temperature? Is that to your liking? And right now, that does not exist within Masonry. Nobody's checking back. Did that lodge reach out to you? Right. How was your first meeting? How'd it go? Maybe that lodge is not the right fit. Right. And someone really, I think, needs to step up and stand for the brand, the experience in Masonry, and make sure that they find the right fit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we need to remember that, everybody, some people like to fall back on the to be one, ask one. Well, filling out the form online is asking.
Yes.
That maybe they don't know how to find a lodge. Maybe they missed the building. Maybe your lodge meets in a church basement, so they don't even know you're there.
That's right.
So a digital ask is still an ask, and you need to engage with those people and bring them to your lodge.
So what recommendations do you have for us trying to address this problem?
Yeah, and just one point on the to be one, ask one. Successful campaign in its own right, but it worked when 1 out of 10 men were Masons, and you would run in it, at the bar, bowling, at work, you would see the ring, maybe an adult elevator, experience. You'd be like, oh, are you a Mason? Nowadays, everybody's working from home.
Yeah.
Gen Z doesn't really go out like we used to, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the world has changed, and you're absolutely right. What we can do is just recognize that things have changed. And you're right, the knock at the front door, the 3 distinct knocks, those are happening online. They're happening on websites, they're happening on Google. My wife and I just moved to Arizona, where she's from, and so I'm shopping around trying to find a lodge. And, I'm pulling up these lodge websites, and some of them are just brutal.
Oh, yeah.
And, you call the phone number, it's disconnected. Yep. You fill out a form, and you don't even know if it goes through, or they're missing an SSL certificate, so my browser won't even load the form because they think it's attackers or something. There's just, a
Where
lot
does our
of misses.
website go?
Well,
Or
we
email.
have our website, but like I've said, we've had this conversation as trustees, and I'll just say it on the air. We either need to update the website or we need to kill the website, because an out-of-date website makes you look like you're dead.
100%.
Just like an unused Facebook page makes you look like you're dead.
Yes.
If you're never posting anything, people are going to assume you're dead even if they find your page.
True.
Yep.
Very true.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like, for a while we had a system that every lodge had a website like pre-made, and it would go to the secretary. It was ungroupable. And now that doesn't quite do it either, I don't think.
I'm not sure about that functionality, but that if you search Lake Lodge Freemasons, our Facebook page is the first thing that pops up. Our website is the second thing that pops up, but none of the information on our website is up to date, nor is the format of our website up to date.
So what do you think a jurisdiction should do to try to mend this issue? Like, how do we stop ignoring the knocks on our West Gate?
I mean, that's the challenge,
Yeah.
right? I've had the great fortune of working with, there's some that are doing a lot of things right. And there's a lot of men that see the same problems and are coming up with pretty innovative solutions to solve it. I was talking to one of the Grand Officers, and he put together kind of an AI answering service, which, I mean, innovative, right?
Yep.
I don't think that's it.
Yep.
That's going to solve our issue, but it's having a system at the door. It's not reliant on one brother, to answer everything. Because what happens if he goes on vacation or he gets burned out, or it shouldn't be relying on one man. It should be relying on the system and the structure. And I like to think, Masons speculate like we're builders. And so if we look at this from more of a structural lens, and we put things in that are missing, that's the key. And I think what's missing right now is that entryway, because right now what's happening is all these inquiries are going right to the Western Gate. Not everyone's ready to be contacted. Not everyone is qualified. They might have seen a video, they might have, read a blog, but there's more that needs to happen before we waste volunteers' time vetting these men.
Yeah. Well, and like I'm always curious, especially now in the age of AI where coding has become more accessible to the common people. It's been democratized a little bit. If there's a way that we could build some sort of platform that tracks metrics, how many dashboards there are out there that can help you track a metric. So you, at a quick glance, you can see, okay, how are we doing? Where's this? Where's that? I mean, good data in, good data out is going to be a problem in that always. You got to have someone who's actually making sure the numbers are in there. Am I right?
Logging the call and
Yep. But like with that, there, I think the biggest issue that we're kind of circling around is there's a lack of visibility into that information. So we had a while where we had the brothers on that list come down from the district to the lodge, to the rep, from the rep to the other rep, right? And then if those lists went uncontacted, it was recommended that our DD put in our weekly or monthly emails or whatever. They're calling the Lazarus list. It means these are brothers that where attempts were made or they've been sitting on the list too long, and they're like, hey, this is free game, guys. Anyone can call them. Like, I'm leaving it out to you guys. If anyone sees this list and is trying to get more brothers, you can give this a shot. They've already been pre-vetted by Grand Lodge. That happens in our process too, where it gets, before it comes down from that district thing, they check like the background check quickly or the basic search to be like, this guy is a massive felon, and you're just like, oh, we're not even gonna send it down that list. I don't need to come down and waste your time. But like, it's like at the same time, that's a little bit of visibility, right? But also, I know that list is much larger and there's a lot going on, so it's hard to know where things are. They do also list on that thing what lodges were sent leads to, so that they know that they're being fair, that they're not just being like too particular, so that you can go, oh, okay, I can see how the spread is and stuff like that. Yeah, it is a really weird problem, and it is, per usual, a modern problem that Masons are always slow to sometimes catch the wave when it's running, and then it takes them sometimes longer than usual to kind of catch up and go, okay, we got to do something.
Yes.
But yeah, it is an interesting one.
And Linda had some studies. The Be It Freemason sites brought in about 150,000 inquiries, right? That hefty form. And even though 80% of them have not been responded to, Scottish Rite reached out and asked these men, are you still interested?
Yeah.
And 90+% of them said yes. Which, I mean, that's wild, because any other industry in the world, that silence, that drop in the ball would be, like they would never come back.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're still interested in being contacted and moving forward, I think that's really a testament to who we are.
Well, and I think it has a lot to do, and this is my own personal opinion on this, but I think it has a lot to do with the the way the world exists right now, a lot of these younger men, their sole experiences with relationships and stuff are primarily digital.
Yes.
And we offer I can shake your hand and look you in the eye, and we're going to be in the same room together experience.
Right.
You know, it's also like interesting with the two. People are curious, and that curiosity draws them in. They're curious about our symbols. We were talking to a brother from Ontario, and he was saying that he sent out a personality test, and the number one trait that everyone he did in Masonry had was curiosity was in their like top 5 on like all of them. And I go, it is an interesting thing because that's the key. Is Masons are curious. That's part of the reason that our system works so well is the fact that we have trade secrets attracts curious people. And being curious and a seeker of light is a trait that we look for in Masonry. So our system is designed to draw curious people who are like, I want to know more about this.
Right.
And I want you to apply that when you join here, and then I want you to apply that to your life. Like, you should always be wanting to figure out something else and learn more. It's one of these things that there has to be, with it being a tech issue, there should be a way we can lobby tech to help deploy it too.
Yeah, there should be.
And I will say, I had a chance to talk to the guy from Groupable.
Yeah.
And he's working on this issue. Like, I was very impressed with that conversation. So some of this stuff is getting built. I know I'm actually meeting with one of the guys from the Scottish Rite today. They're also building a system to kind of help with this. So a lot of men see this issue, and I'm excited to see kind of where it will come and hopefully have a hand in shaping it.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy we're bringing this to the attention of our listeners too, because I think part of the solution is people need to be aware that it's a problem before they're able to go, oh, am I part of this? Like, checks email, goes, oh my God. And you're like, oh.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's interesting because, a lot of people come to me wanting leads or the Grandmaster is, delivered a mission that he's going to raise 1,000 Master Masons this year. So, there's a lot of pressure organizationally to make that happen. And it's my job to be like, whoa, hold on. Let's see what you have built. Let's do a gap analysis. Let's make sure you can handle the inflow of leads.
Yeah.
And a lot of them can't. Right? So it's been interesting. We have it down to a science of kind of using vertical video, as you know, is the most popular, kind of TikTokification of social platforms.
Yep.
Right.
And even like working with the Scottish Rite, getting them to make more vertical video. And one thing we've noticed, and this is across the board, not just with Masonry, is, the really nicely produced commercial footage with actors, that doesn't resonate with the younger audience. The truth is, the iPhone camera, the native content, that's the thing, because people can kind of sniff out the inauthenticity of some of this content.
Yeah.
They want to hear from real men.
Right.
And, I know a lot of people kind of roll their eyes with the DI and, representation in Disney movies and whatnot. But the truth is, Masonry is beautiful because we have diverse backgrounds, right? We have a Buddhist at our lodge. We have Muslim, with Jewish, Christian, and we all come together under one roof and we talk.
Right.
We're brothers. And I think we do need to represent that well. And that's been a criticism of, maybe the Not Just a Man of Mason campaign, is that we all look kind of like middle management in our suits and, kind of cleaned up. And, if you go to any lodge, we all have the burly beards and, we've all grown Masonically from all the dinners. And, so I think there is really an option to present us as we are, and I think it would still resonate.
Well, and that's like some of the angles, like especially with me and Matt thinking on our podcast here, is like, we don't want to show the polished, like inauthentic version. And I was talking to, God, I forget who it was, somebody in my jurisdiction, one of the grands, and he was like, take more pictures of you guys doing stuff, not just a picture of you in your suit standing at the end of the lodge and looking like that, because people don't relate to that. Masons relate to it, but not the general public. He's like, those are fine, but don't make that be your only content. Like, one or two of they all look the same. I've taken many of the pictures myself, and they'll see and go, oh, that looks interesting, but they want to see Masons being Masons, like just in a polo, chatting, doing stuff to show like these aren't aliens, they're just guys, and you're like, there's normal people doing stuff.
I mean, we have a the perfect experience with that. I used to do promotional videos for the podcast right the day before a new episode would come out, and I did them from the back of my work truck while I was pulling orders for stores.
There you go.
So I'm reaching into boxes, I'm in a hoodie or whatever I got on that day, throwing stuff in my bin, pulling and getting the order together while I'm talking to the, not even really looking at the camera, just saying what we got coming out the next day. And everybody, the feedback on those was insane. Everybody loved them for some reason.
I would love to see, you guys mentioned how cool your dinners are at your lodge. I would love to see you guys in the kitchen making a meal together. Like that's the juice.
Yep, we've done dynamic content from the kitchen with lav mics, a podcast where we're cooking. I'm like, pass me the potatoes. Anyway, so what about this? And you're like, yeah. And yeah, it is fun, and I think there are a lot, when you look around some of the landscape, there are brothers who have sniffed this out, and they are doing this content and making these types of things. And it's a very creative period to be a Mason right now.
Absolutely.
There's a lot going on and a lot of opportunity to innovate and do cool things in this, modern social media landscape.
100%. And there's also the double-edged sword of that, which is there's a lot of imposter accounts. And we've been trying to help some of the Grand Lodges take down some of the impersonators that are putting out weird content and, selling knickknacks and, pretending to be the Grand Lodge of whatever. And it's hard because if Freemasonry doesn't step up and control the narrative a little more and show up in these spaces, that gap gets filled in by all these weird conspiracy theories.
Right.
Yep.
And we need to just be out there and talk. You guys are doing such a great job of that. And, I just applaud you, and I hope you inspire more men to do the same.
I do too. We're forming an independent body called the Independent Body of Podcasters. And it's this. Yep.
I love that. I love that.
Well, Harrison, thank you for coming on and joining us and chatting. I think this is an important topic, and I think it's going to be a topic we're going to continue to hear about as time goes on because it is such an important topic.
It has to be talked about.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's a worthwhile challenge.
Yep.
Excited to be part of it.
All right. Thank you. All right. As we are in their home turf, we have been able to talk to a bunch of people from At Refreshment, which has been an absolute hoot, and we've been rolling around COGMNA with this charming young man. So we're going to bring on now our buddy Brock.
Hello.
From At Refreshment Video Masonic Video Podcast.
Yeah.
Yep, they have a great video. We were just talking with Mark earlier, and we've been trying to get him on, but he's been taking pictures everywhere.
Yes,
it's nice to have you on. So, Brock, what originally got you into Masonry?
Oh, my goodness. The curiosity of the mysteries. That would be it for sure. I've wanted to join Freemasonry for a while and never really met Freemason in person, and then once I did know one Freemason. He was a great guy. He unfortunately passed away before I was able to join, but I used to talk to him about Freemasonry. And then I met a kid, Andrew, in the music scene, and he was a Freemason. He introduced me to his lodge and went up there and had dinner, and that's that. Yeah. You guys know how that goes.
Right.
The spaghetti's too good to pass up.
Yeah. I looked through the window, and I seen that crock pot little bubbly green beans. I knew that was my place.
The green beans always get you.
Yeah.
So the At Refreshment Masonic podcast.
Masonic Video Podcast.
I always just say At Refreshment. I keep it tight. You guys are on, how many episodes have you run now?
I don't know.
Number of years, though.
Number of years.
Yeah. I think we've been around 8 years.
Yeah, they're an OG to the Masonic podcast.
Yeah, one of the forebringers. They led the way for us.
The funniest thing is, have you guys ever listened to the Freemasons podcast?
Yeah.
I think they're from New Haven, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Shout out George. They came out about the same time that we did. We recorded our episode first, and then they released their episode first.
Oh.
So the week we were about to release, their show came out, and we held back, I think, a week or so. And we were like, oh, man, these guys are having a beer and talking about Freemasonry. But it was audio only, I believe, at the time. So, but yeah, their podcast, I was listening to that at the time. And Whence Came You and Masonic Roundtable, Nick Diamond's podcast, and a few other Masonic podcasts at the time. So I was kind of telling Wes about them all. And Wes is like, dude, I don't listen to those. Those are so boring. There are no good Masonic podcasts out there. And there's a few different types of podcasting. You can have an educational podcast when you're discussing something, or like an interview, but there's one thing like Wes is saying, is nobody's representing brotherhood or like fellowship. So those were like two of the main things that we wanted to try to harness and incorporate. Then once Marty and Yoshi, and then we met Dave and Mark and Eric, and we've had all these dudes come through. So
it's always there's like a dozen.
It's a giant cast.
Yeah. And there was a time for a while when Wes started doing all of his memes, and he was fully into meme, and I think it was right after the birth of my first child, and I was like, all right, boys, it's fun to do the podcast, but I think I'm going to have to take a break from it for a while. And I didn't even think it was going to be a break. I thought I was completely done with the show. And then, they kind of scrambled for a minute to find a replacement. But, yeah, we've had so many great guys. Tyler, he's another great guy who stepped up and has helped out with us. And, I mean, we still have a few new guys now. Shout out to you guys. You know who you are. Who stand in the back and help out with sound and do sound check and help us with lighting and all kinds of stuff like that. So we're a growing cast.
Yeah. That's part of the fun thing I like about your show.
Yeah.
Because the cast is so big, it's chaotic as heck at points. And you're like, oh, my God. Who's this guy now?
Well, it's a mystery. You could tune into one episode and get 3 of you, and then the next episode it's like 3 completely different people. So it's always a mystery, and it's like it's less of a consistent cast and more a cast of recurring cameos.
Yeah, it's like Wes and the Funky Bunch. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. That's what keeps it fresh. But the experience is always the same because it's the same vibe that I think Wes was going for. It's brotherhood, and it's just brotherhood in action. And there's people everywhere. There's probably somebody climbing on the roof for some reason, swinging like monkey bars.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about people trying to climb on roofs.
Anywhere,
that's true. So I mean, we did a podcast with them recently. Joined you guys on the
on Zoom. What is it? Riverside.
On Riverside, classy setup.
Riverside chat.
Yeah, it's fun. Fun bunch of boys doing a fun bunch of things. So anyone listening, check out at Refreshment Video Masonic Podcast.
Masonic Video Podcast. Just say at Refreshment. If you search at Refreshment,
at Refreshment, the MVPs.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks, Brock, for coming on.
Thank you guys so much, man. It's a pleasure.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our 3rd episode from the Conference of Grandmasters of North America. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll have one more episode from our trip to the conference. The last one will only be about 30 minutes, so thank you guys for coming along for the ride with us. It's been a really fun time doing all these great interviews and being able to share all these great Masons' perspectives and experiences. So thank you all for tuning in. Always be sure to follow us on social media, share our podcast, get the word out. We love you all, and take care.